Hello, I'm Pastor David Hewitt, pastor at King of Glory Lutheran Church in Carmel, Indiana. We're glad that you could join us today, April 30th, 2020, for our 7th edition of Boosts from the Bible. Let me begin. I was tired. I was sick. I was very much alone. And I was surprised that this was happening to young, healthy me. It was my first summer school in college, the summer of 1981. And as I looked in the mirror of the little restroom on the first floor of my Lutheran fraternity house, I saw myself in a new way. I was covered with red spots all over the upper half of my body, and I freaked out. I called my folks, and they told me to go to the doctor, which I did. She said I had hives due to a virus that had also caused my throat to be sore. Because it was a virus, I had to isolate myself for 2 weeks. Get some food and drink as you go back to your room in your house, she told me, and let everyone in the house know what you have, and then hunker down. Which I did, but I did not like it. No one really knows what it's like to be completely isolated until one has to go through it. Isolation is especially aggravating when it's not your choice to do so, when you are forced to be alone. Well, my illness forced it on me, and at the time I got a little depressed about it. Later, near the end of those 2 weeks, my parents drove 3 hours down to the campus to check in on me and cheer me up. But other than that, I had only one companion those 2 weeks. And I'll get to who that was at the end here. I bring my 1981 experience to this devotion for obvious reasons. We are in our 8th week of forced isolation, and for the most part, most of us don't like it. To mention a trivial example first, you can see how long my hair is getting. If you were to go back and review my Thursday devotion after Thursday devotion, it's obvious I have not tried to get it cut yet. Many of us have long, itchy hair, which just adds to the general disgruntlement we are apt to feel these days. And that growing disgruntlement can have implications for our spiritual lives. Let me give you an example using terminology some Christians use. Now, I know some Christian small groups, wonderful people that meet every week, once a week, and say to each other, okay, let's now share with each other times this past week when God was close to you and times this past week when God was far away from you. But you see, the problem I have with that approach is the fact that God is always close to you, even if you do not feel God's closeness. But sharing our experiences in that way does reveal one thing that our flesh, our self-serving mind and heart, tends to do when it contemplates God's presence in the rough times. Often our flesh in the rough times will demand of God, well, what have you done for me lately? Unlike the Christ-like spirits inside of us, our self-centered flesh, even when trying to be religious, is mainly concerned about number one, and is constantly disappointed when things don't go 100% the way our flesh wants it to go. When 9 things go well in a day, and 1 thing goes wrong, what does our flesh tend to dwell upon? That's right, the one wrong thing. And now we find ourselves in a circumstance, this virus time, when many things can go wrong at once. And in that point, our flesh cries out, I'm in trouble. Where are you, God? Where are you? That's what the great prophet Elijah felt like back in the day. Our boost from the Bible for today goes back to an incident near the end of Elijah's long life as a prophet for God. Now, originally, Elijah was given a tough assignment by his God, Yahweh. Yahweh commanded Elijah, go and preach that everyone is to follow my covenant and do my will. And then the Yahweh God said, you do that so that you may work against that evil King Ahab and Queen Jezebel. Work against what they are doing against me. Now, King Ahab and Queen Jezebel were not only corrupt and selfish rulers, but they also were well on their way to eliminating all Yahweh worship. Yahweh being Israel's God for hundreds of years before that. Why? Well, in order to replace the worship of Yahweh with the worship of Queen Jezebel's god, Baal. You see, Jezebel was from the kingdom of Tyre, not Israel, and she wanted Tyre's god, Baal, to be the new chief god of Israel, replacing our God, Yahweh. Now, when we come to this passage in 1 Kings, that is our boost from the Bible, please know that Elijah had just gone through a high and a low recently. A high was when Elijah defeated the priests of Baal in a contest over which god, Yahweh or Baal, could command the elements of the world. Yahweh defeated Baal, and soon after that, several priests of Baal died, which deeply angered the ruthless Queen Jezebel. She then threatened Elijah, and she threatened Elijah, and Elijah knew she was deadly serious. As recounted in 1 Kings 19, we read that Elijah was afraid. He got up and fled for his life. Fleeing the nation of Israel entirely, Elijah continued south through all of nearby Judea, and then even much farther south into the desert, where Moses had received the Ten Commandments at Mount Sinai, which is just about as far away as Elijah could go. Along the way, fearful and wondering if God would ever come to his defense, Elijah, in all honesty, complained to God. I've had enough, he said. Now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am not any better than my ancestors. Elijah's spirit did indeed seem crushed. And, we can relate to Elijah. That's the thing about times like these. We are not able to do much of what we are used to doing. And we are concerned about all of the losses, and it takes a toll on us. Elijah became afraid, and he probably felt that prophets aren't supposed to be afraid. Prophets are supposed to be, as he put it, better than their ancestors. But he was not better this time, and he became depressed. And we can understand that at times like these, it is easier to get depressed. And when depressed, as I have been on a few occasions in my lifetime, we tend to retreat into a little corner of our world. Elijah did just that. He not only ran as far away as he could, he deposited himself into a dark, murky cave when he got to Mount Sinai to see God. So let's pick up our boost from the Bible there, starting with verse 9 of 1 Kings 19. At that place Elijah came to a cave and spent the night there. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah, saying, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He answered, "I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they are seeking my life to take it away." Then God said to Elijah, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." There was a great wind, so strong that it was splitting mountains and breaking rocks in pieces before the Lord. The Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. The Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of sheer silence. Now, when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Did you catch that? God did not present himself to Elijah in the way that we might have expected. God was not communicating with those special effects typical of movies and television. No. The high winds, the earthquakes, the great fires of the great movies. No. God was there in the sheer silence. And in that careful, loving silence, Elijah finally heard his God and went out of the cave to listen to his God some more. Like Elijah, when we are fearful, our hearts often are filled with fear, and our fears often happen when we kind of lose track of where God is in our lives. We are fearful when we feel we don't have enough help from God or from other people. When we feel, kind of out of control, which is a normal feeling to have during this unprecedented time. Where are you, God? Well, as we learn from the story of Elijah today, God is there wherever we are. But especially, God is there when we feel isolated and alone. And when we pray, our hearts, bolstered by God's Spirit, which is in our hearts, that heart can hear God say to us, "I am here. Yes, really, I am here with you, and I am taking good care of you. I'm giving you my strength. I'm giving you my love. I'm giving you my special brand of comfort." You feel it? Take it. Yes, take what I give you, God says to us today. It's my amazing grace, and it's free. Now, when I was alone that first college summer, sick as a dog and itching all over, I went to my God and pleaded, "God, please help me." And God did. But as with Elijah, God helped me in a strange way, a way I never anticipated. You see, I'd been taking a course that summer in classical music appreciation. And when our homework called for us to listen on our own to these great classical symphonies, I had a great time. I fell in love with them, especially Beethoven's symphonies. I loved all of Beethoven's symphonies. The ones that everyone's heard of. Ba-ba-ba-bum, ba-ba-ba-bum, the Fifth Symphony. But also, I love several of Beethoven's symphonies that very few people have heard of, like the Fourth Symphony. Zit, 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 But listening to this music that God inspired Beethoven to write, listening to it while I was sick, it helped me not be so lonely. And the beauty of the melodies helped isolated little me understand that somehow I'd be better again. Better and able to listen to this wonderful music for the rest of my life. You never know, in the silence that is now more prevalent than ever, around us now, even at home, you never know what new and different ways God is speaking to us. God might speak through an online worship service, or when you read the Bible on your own, or when praying and not just talking to God, but listening for a while to God in that sheer silence. Whatever it is, God is there. Oh yes, the God of love is there for you, my sisters and brothers. There for you in a very special way. Just as God was there for Beethoven in what is the ultimate kind of silence you can experience on this earth, being deaf. God helped the totally deaf Ludwig van Beethoven compose his final and most inspiring symphony. God can be with you in that special way too, in your isolation. All the while, God moves all of us forward past the wind, the fire, and the earthquake that is striking our world in these days. Amen. Well, thank you as we look ahead to another Boost from the Bible next Thursday at noon, May the 7th. God be with you.